The first time Amara noticed her sister staring at the wedding dress, something inside her tightened quietly. It was not admiration. Admiration looked warm. This looked hungry. The gown hung near the bedroom window, inside a clear garment bag, glowing beneath soft afternoon light like something fragile and sacred. Layers of white satin fell perfectly into place, the lace sleeves delicate as spider silk, tiny pearls sewn carefully across the bodice by hand. Their mother had cried the day Amara bought it. Even the tailor in Lagos had smiled proudly when she stepped out of the fitting room. But Vivian had gone strangely silent that afternoon. She smiled when everyone looked at her, yet her eyes never matched her mouth. At the time, Amara ignored it. Wedding stress made people emotional. Families became chaotic during celebrations. She told herself she was imagining things. But deep down, a quiet unease had already begun growing roots. The house was loud that Saturday morning. Aunties moved in and out of rooms, carrying fabric, food trays, and half-finished decorations, while old high-life music drifted from a speaker downstairs. The scent of stew and perfume filled the air so heavily it almost became part of the walls. Outside, dark rain clouds gathered slowly over the neighborhood, turning the sky gray and heavy. Inside her bedroom, Amara sat cross-legged on the floor, organizing jewelry boxes, while her phone buzzed every few minutes with wedding messages. Vendors, cousins, church members, her fiancé, Daniel. Everyone wanted something. Everyone needed answers. "You're hiding from your own wedding," Daniel had teased earlier on the phone. "I'm surviving it," she replied. He laughed softly, the way he always did when she sounded overwhelmed. That laugh had become home to her over the last 2 years. Calm, steady, gentle. Daniel never raised his voice, never played games, never made her feel uncertain. After years of watching relationships collapse around her, she trusted him in a way that frightened her sometimes. Their connection had felt effortless from the beginning, almost suspiciously easy, which was why she noticed immediately when Vivian never seemed fully comfortable around him. Her younger sister had always been complicated, but over the last year something had changed. The tension became subtle but constant. Small comments disguised as jokes, long silences during wedding conversations, sudden mood shifts whenever Daniel praised Amara openly in front of family. Still, Amara avoided confronting it directly. Some truths felt dangerous even before they were spoken aloud. The bedroom door creaked open softly. Vivian leaned against the frame, wearing black leggings and an oversized t-shirt, her natural curls tied loosely behind her head. "Mama said to ask if you've eaten anything." "Not yet," Amara replied without looking up. "You'll faint before the reception even starts." "Then at least I look dramatic doing it." Vivian smiled faintly and stepped inside. For a moment, silence settled between them, while distant laughter echoed downstairs. Then Vivian's eyes drifted toward the wedding dress near the window. She walked toward it slowly, too slowly. Her fingers brushed lightly across the garment bag. "You still haven't shown me the full thing properly," she murmured. Amara looked up carefully. "You saw it at the fitting." "Not really." Vivian tilted her head slightly. "Everybody was crying and talking over each other." She kept staring at the gown. "I want to see what all the obsession is about." Amara stood slowly and unzipped the garment bag halfway. The satin shimmered instantly beneath the light. Vivian's expression changed the moment she saw it fully again. Something flickered across her face so quickly it almost escaped notice. Pain, longing, resentment, maybe all three. "Wow," she whispered. "It's beautiful." "You sound surprised." Vivian laughed softly. "No, just..." She paused. Some dresses really do look like they belong to a certain person. The comment sat strangely in the room. Amara forced a small smile. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Vivian shrugged casually, though her eyes remained fixed on the gown. You just always fit perfectly into the life people imagine for you. Amara frowned slightly. Vivian, relax. She waved her hand dismissively. I'm complimenting you. But something about her tone felt sharp beneath the softness. Amara had known her sister long enough to recognize hidden bitterness disguised as humor. It was an old habit, one that began years ago when they were children sharing the same bedroom. People always compared them openly. Teachers, relatives, church members. Amara was called graceful, responsible, calm. Vivian was called loud, emotional, difficult. Adults rarely understood how dangerous comparisons became inside young hearts, especially when repeated for years. Amara remembered one Christmas vividly. She was 14. Vivian was 12. Their aunt had bought matching dresses for family photos. When everyone praised how elegant Amara looked, Vivian locked herself in the bathroom and refused to come out for nearly an hour. Later that night, Amara found the sleeve of her own dress ripped carefully near the seam. Vivian denied touching it, but both sisters understood the truth silently. Their rivalry was never loud in public. That made it worse. It lived in glances, tension, tiny invisible wounds that never healed completely. Do you ever get scared? Vivian asked suddenly. Amara blinked. About what? Vivian turned toward her slowly. Marriage. The question felt unusually sincere. Of course, Amara admitted. Anybody who says otherwise is lying. Vivian studied her carefully. And you still trust him completely? Daniel? Amara smiled automatically. Yes. Vivian looked down briefly before speaking again. That must feel nice. There was something painfully honest about the way she said it. Amara softened slightly. Viv. No, I mean it. Vivian folded her arms loosely. You found somebody who looks at you like you matter more than anything else in the room. Her eyes drifted away again. Not everyone gets that. Silence filled the space between them. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. Amara suddenly noticed how tired Vivian looked beneath the makeup-free face and sarcastic smiles. Her sister had gone through 2 terrible relationships in 3 years. One cheated repeatedly, the other drained her financially before disappearing entirely. Since then, Vivian carried herself differently, harder, more defensive, as if disappointment had taught her to expect abandonment before love even arrived. Your person will come too, Amara said quietly. Vivian smiled again, but this time the sadness behind it became impossible to hide. Maybe. Another silence settled. Then Vivian spoke without looking at her. Can I try it on? Amara stared at her. What? Vivian turned toward the dress again. Just for a second. No. The answer escaped too quickly. Vivian's eyebrows lifted immediately. Wow. Amara stood awkwardly. I don't think it's a good idea. Because of superstition? Vivian laughed lightly. You really think trying on fabric will curse your marriage? That's not what I said. Then what? Vivian crossed her arms slowly. You think I'll ruin it? Vivian, stop twisting my words. I'm not twisting anything. Her voice sharpened slightly. You reacted like I asked to steal it. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Amara exhaled carefully, already exhausted by the emotional landmine forming beneath a simple conversation. I just want everything to stay perfect until the wedding. Vivian laughed again, but there was no warmth in it now. Perfect. Right. She moved away from the dress toward the vanity table. Everything always has to stay perfect for Amara. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Turning every conversation into a fight. Vivian grabbed the lipstick from the vanity and examined it absent-mindedly. Maybe because people only notice me when I become difficult. The statement landed harder than she intended. Both sisters felt it instantly. Amara's expression softened slightly. That's not true. Vivian met her eyes through the mirror. You sure about that? Before Amara could respond, her phone buzzed again. Daniel. She answered quickly, grateful for the interruption. Hey. Please tell me you've eaten. She smiled despite herself. You and Mama should start a support group. Daniel laughed softly. I'm serious. Brides faint every weekend somewhere. Vivian rolled her eyes quietly and turned away. But Amara noticed the flicker in her expression the moment Daniel's voice filled the room. What time are you coming over? Amara asked. Soon. I'm picking up the cake samples first. You're still doing that yourself? I don't trust your cousin Chike around desserts. She laughed. Fair point. His voice softened slightly. You okay? The question surprised her. Yeah. You sound tense. Amara glanced briefly towards Vivian's back. Just wedding chaos. I'll rescue you soon. Please do. After the call ended, silence returned instantly. Vivian sat near the vanity scrolling through her phone without speaking. Yet the tension remained heavy and alive inside the room. Finally, Amara spoke carefully. You know Daniel has friends, right? Vivian looked up slowly. What? Good men. Stable men. Vivian's expression hardened almost immediately. You trying to set me up? I'm trying to help. I don't need charity. That's not what this is. Vivian stood abruptly. You know what's funny? Her voice turned colder now. People always assume lonely women are broken somehow. Amara frowned. Nobody said you're broken. They don't have to. Vivian grabbed her handbag from the bed. It's written all over the way married women look at single women after 30. Vivian, don't. Her eyes flashed sharply. Don't give me one of your gentle motivational speeches right now. The room fell quiet again. Pain moved visibly beneath Vivian's anger now, raw and restless. For a second, Amara almost reached for her, but years of complicated tension froze her in place. Some relationships become so fragile that even kindness feels dangerous. Vivian moved toward the door before stopping suddenly beside the wedding dress again. She stared at it silently for several long seconds. You know what the scary part is? She asked softly. Amara swallowed. What? Vivian touched the garment bag lightly with her fingertips. One day, people stop seeing you as a person. Her eyes remained fixed on the gown. They start seeing you as a symbol of everything they failed to become. Amara felt unease crawl beneath her skin. Vivian. But her sister walked out before she could finish. The bedroom door closed gently behind her. For several moments, Amara remained completely still. Thunder rumbled louder outside now. Rain finally began tapping softly against the windows. Downstairs, family voices continued floating through the house, unaware of the storm quietly building upstairs. Amara stared at the wedding dress again. Suddenly, it no longer looked joyful. It looked dangerous. like something capable of exposing truths nobody was prepared to face. She tried shaking the feeling away. Vivian was emotional. Weddings affected families strangely. By next week, everything would settle down again. At least, that was what Amara told herself. But deep inside, instinct whispered a warning she could no longer ignore. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And before this wedding day arrived, something inside their family was going to break open completely. By evening, the rain had grown heavier. Water slid endlessly down the windows, while distant thunder rolled across the darkening sky. The house remained crowded and noisy downstairs, but upstairs the atmosphere had changed completely. A strange tension lingered beneath everything now, subtle but impossible to ignore. Amara sat alone at the edge of her bed, staring at her phone without really reading the messages flooding the screen. Bridesmaids asked questions about schedules. Vendors requested confirmations. Cousins sent laughing voice notes. Yet her mind remained trapped inside the conversation with Vivian earlier that afternoon. The words kept replaying differently each time. One day, people stop seeing you as a person. They start seeing you as a symbol of everything they failed to become. It did not sound like jealousy anymore. It sounded deeper, more dangerous. Amara hated the guilt growing inside her chest, because part of her understood exactly where it came from. Growing up beside Vivian had never been simple. Adults compared them constantly, even when they thought they were being kind. Amara was called calm, while Vivian was called dramatic. Amara was called responsible, while Vivian was called reckless. Over time, those labels hardened into identities neither sister knew how to escape. The worst part was that Amara often benefited from the comparisons without meaning to. Doors opened more easily for her. Teachers trusted her automatically. Relatives praised her before Vivian even entered the room. It became so normal, she stopped noticing it years ago. But maybe Vivian never stopped noticing. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Their mother stepped inside, carrying folded wrappers for the traditional ceremony. "There you are," she smiled tiredly. "Everybody keeps asking for the bride." "Tell them the bride ran away." "Don't joke like that." Her mother sat beside her carefully. Even beneath makeup and jewelry, exhaustion lined her face. Wedding preparation aged mothers faster than time itself. "You and Vivian fought again?" Amara hesitated. "Not exactly." Her mother sighed softly. "That girl has been carrying anger in her spirit for years." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Because every time we tried, she shut us out." Her mother adjusted the fabric in her lap quietly. "Some people confuse help with criticism." Amara looked toward the rain-covered window. "Do you think we compared her too much growing up?" Silence followed immediately. That silence answered everything. Her mother looked down slowly. "Parents make mistakes they don't understand until much later." Pain flickered across her expression. "Sometimes we praise one child without realizing another child is bleeding beside us." Amara's throat tightened. "Mama, I loved you both. I know. But love is not always experienced equally." The honesty in her voice felt devastating. Before Amara could respond, loud laughter erupted downstairs, followed by someone calling for her mother from the kitchen. She stood slowly. "Try to rest tonight." Then she paused near the door. "And be patient with your sister, even after the way she's acting." Her mother looked deeply tired suddenly. "Pain makes people behave like strangers." After she left, Amara sat alone again, listening to the storm outside. Something about the house felt unsettled now, as if years of hidden emotions had finally begun rising to the surface. She wanted to speak to Vivian again calmly, but instinct told her tonight was not the night. Some conversations required distance before they could happen safely. Around 8 o'clock, Daniel finally arrived. The moment Amara heard his voice downstairs, relief moved through her instantly. He carried peace into rooms without trying. That was one of the reasons she loved him. In a family full of loud personalities and emotional tension, Daniel remained grounded, predictable in the best way. A few moments later, footsteps approached upstairs. "Your favorite human has arrived with emergency sugar supplies," he announced while entering the room. Amara smiled automatically at the sight of the small bakery box in his hands. "Please tell me that's chocolate." "Obviously." He kissed her forehead gently before placing the box on the bed. "How bad is the chaos level?" "Somewhere between family celebration and emotional warfare." "Sounds about right." He sat beside her carefully. "You okay?" The softness in his voice nearly broke her composure. "I think so." Daniel studied her face more closely. "That's not convincing." Amara hesitated before speaking. "Vivian's been acting strange all day." His expression shifted slightly. "Strange how?" "Emotional. Defensive." She looked away briefly. "I think she's carrying resentment toward me." Daniel leaned back slowly. "Honestly, I've sensed that for a while." The admission startled her. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't want to create problems where there might not be any." He paused carefully. "And because she already seemed uncomfortable around me." Amara frowned slightly. "Did she ever say anything inappropriate to you?" "No." But the hesitation before his answer felt important. "Daniel." He exhaled quietly. "Nothing direct, just moments." "What kind of moments?" "Long stares sometimes. Weird tension. Questions about our relationship that felt unusually personal." Amara felt cold suddenly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I genuinely thought I might be imagining it." Before she could respond, voices echoed from downstairs again. Someone called Daniel's name. He stood reluctantly. "Your uncle wants help moving tables before the rain floods the backyard." "Good luck surviving my family." "I deserve compensation for this marriage." She smiled faintly for the first time all evening. Daniel squeezed her hand gently before heading toward the door. Then he stopped suddenly. "Actually, your mum asked me to bring up the extra cake samples." "Now?" "Apparently your aunties are fighting over flavours downstairs." He laughed softly. "I'm escaping before somebody throws puff puff at me." Amara shook her head, smiling, while he disappeared briefly downstairs again. A few moments later, she stood and moved toward the mirror, adjusting her robe absent-mindedly. The room felt quieter now, with the storm muting sounds from outside. Rain hammered steadily against the roof, while flashes of lightning illuminated the bedroom every few minutes. Then the door opened again unexpectedly. Vivian stepped inside. Amara turned immediately. Her sister's expression looked unreadable. Calm on the surface. Too calm. "Daniel downstairs?" Vivian asked softly. "Getting cake boxes?" Vivian nodded slowly. Then her eyes drifted toward the wedding dress again. The garment bag still hung near the window, glowing faintly beneath the lamplight. Silence stretched between them. "About earlier," Amara began carefully. "I don't want us fighting before the wedding." Vivian walked toward the dress without responding. "You know," she murmured, "I used to imagine my own wedding constantly when we were younger." Amara watched her cautiously. "Everybody does." "Not like me." Vivian smiled faintly.
I planned every detail in my head. The music, the flowers.
The way my husband would look at me. Her fingertips brushed lightly against the garment bag again. I genuinely believed I'd be the first one married. Something about the sadness in her voice unsettled Amara deeply. Viv, can I ask you something honestly? Vivian turned slowly toward her. Do you think some people are simply easier to love? The question landed heavily. No. Really? Vivian's eyes searched hers carefully. Because life says otherwise every single day. Before Amara could answer, Vivian unzipped the garment bag slowly. What are you doing? Relax. Her voice remained soft. I just want to see it properly one last time. She lifted the gown carefully from the hanger. The satin spilled across her arms like liquid ivory. Even now, the dress looked breathtaking. Vivian stared at it almost reverently. It's strange, she whispered, how fabric can become powerful enough to change a woman's entire identity overnight. Vivian put it back, but her sister barely seemed to hear her. Instead, she disappeared behind the folding screen near the corner of the room, carrying the dress with her. Amara stood immediately. Seriously, stop. It's only for a minute. The sound of fabric moving filled the silence. Then the zipper sliding upward. Amara's pulse quickened with growing discomfort. This isn't funny anymore. Who said I was joking? The response came softly from behind the screen. A few seconds later, Vivian stepped out. Amara's breath caught despite herself. The dress fit almost perfectly. The satin hugged Vivian's figure elegantly, while the lace sleeves rested delicately against her skin. For one terrifying moment, she truly looked like the bride. But it was not the beauty that frightened Amara. It was the expression on Vivian's face. She stared into the mirror with raw emotion flooding her features. Longing, grief, bitterness, hope. It looked less like someone playing dress-up and more like someone mourning a life she believed was stolen from her. Wow, Vivian whispered to her own reflection. Maybe this was supposed to be mine. Amara felt ice move through her stomach. Take it off. Vivian ignored her completely. She lifted the skirt slightly and turned toward the mirror again. Do you know what hurts the most? She asked quietly. Watching people celebrate the version of womanhood you spent your whole life trying to become. Vivian. No. Her voice trembled now. I'm serious. Tears gathered slowly in her eyes, though she continued staring at herself. You walk into rooms and people soften automatically. Men protect you. Women admire you. Even strangers trust you. She laughed bitterly beneath her breath. I walk into rooms and people prepare themselves. Amara's chest tightened painfully. That's not true. It is. Vivian turned toward her suddenly. You just don't notice because you've never lived on this side of comparison. Before Amara could respond, footsteps approached rapidly from downstairs, followed by Daniel's voice in the hallway. Mara, your mom says if these cake boxes disappear, it'll start another family war. Panic flashed across Amara instantly. Take it off now! But Vivian did not move. Instead, she stared directly into the mirror, adjusting the veil slowly over her curls. The bedroom door opened. Daniel stepped inside, carrying 2 bakery boxes stacked in his arms. His smile appeared automatically, then vanished completely. Silence exploded through the room. Daniel froze near the doorway, staring directly at Vivian in the wedding dress. The boxes nearly slipped from his hands before he steadied them awkwardly. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Vivian turned toward him slowly, and then Amara saw it clearly. The look on her sister's face was not embarrassment. It was anticipation. Dangerous, trembling anticipation. "What do you think?" Vivian asked softly. Daniel looked instantly uncomfortable. "I didn't know someone was changing." He immediately shifted his eyes toward Amara. "Sorry." But Vivian stepped closer before the moment could end. "No, stay." Her voice lowered slightly. "I want an honest opinion." Daniel carefully placed the cake boxes on the desk without looking directly at her again. "It's a beautiful dress." Vivian smiled faintly. "Maybe too beautiful." Amara's heartbeat pounded violently now. Every instinct screamed that something terrible was unfolding. Daniel sensed it too. She could see tension forming in his posture immediately. "You should probably change back before somebody sees," he said carefully. Vivian tilted her head slightly. "Why?" "Because it's Amara's wedding dress." The reminder sharpened the atmosphere instantly. Vivian laughed quietly, though sadness lingered heavily beneath it. "Right, Amara's." Then her eyes locked onto his. "Tell me something honestly, Daniel." Amara stepped forward immediately. "Vivian, enough." But Vivian continued speaking without looking away from him. "If you had met me first, would things be different?" The question slammed into the room like thunder. Daniel stared at her in stunned silence. Amara felt her entire body go cold. "What kind of question is that?" Daniel finally asked. Vivian shrugged gently, though her hands trembled slightly against the dress fabric. "A simple one." "It's inappropriate." "Maybe." Her eyes never left his. "But answer it anyway." Amara could barely breathe now. Daniel's face hardened carefully, not with anger, but discomfort. "I love Amara." Vivian smiled sadly. "That's not what I asked. It's the only answer that matters." Something shattered visibly across Vivian's expression then. Tiny, brief, but devastating. She looked at him as if watching a door close forever. Then slowly, bitterness replaced the vulnerability again. "Of course," she whispered. "The perfect answer from the perfect man." Amara stepped between them immediately. "Take off the dress." Vivian looked at her slowly. "You really still think this is about a dress?" The room fell silent except for rain pounding violently outside. Lightning flashed across the windows, illuminating all three faces at once. And in that brief white light, Amara finally saw the full truth written openly across her sister's face. Vivian was not simply jealous of the wedding. She was in love with the groom. The realization hit Amara so hard she could barely nobody breathe. For a moment, nobody moved. Rain battered the windows while thunder rolled through the dark sky outside. But inside the bedroom, the silence felt even louder. Vivian stood frozen in the wedding dress, tears gathering in her eyes, while Daniel looked trapped between shock and discomfort. Amara stared at her sister as years of strange behavior suddenly rearranged themselves into one terrible truth. The tension, the bitterness, the coldness every time Daniel touched her hand or called her beautiful. It had never been random. Vivian had been hiding feelings she never learned how to control. "Vivian," Amara whispered, but her voice sounded weak even to herself. Vivian laughed softly through trembling lips. There it is, she murmured. That look. Daniel stepped forward carefully. I think this conversation needs to stop. Why? Vivian snapped suddenly. Because the truth finally became uncomfortable? Her composure cracked completely now. Years of buried resentment poured out at once. Do you know what it feels like, watching someone else live the life you imagined for yourself? She asked, staring directly at Amara. Do you know what it's like being invisible beside your own sister? You are not invisible, Amara said immediately. Please stop saying that. Vivian's eyes flashed with pain. That's easy for you to say. You've never had to beg people to notice you. Daniel's expression tightened. Vivian, this isn't healthy. Don't analyze me, she shot back. You have no idea what I've carried. Then her voice softened again, almost heartbreakingly. I met you first. Daniel frowned slightly. What? Vivian swallowed hard. At the cafe near campus, 2 years ago. Recognition slowly appeared on his face. You were crying. Because my boyfriend had just left me. She gave a weak laugh. You bought me coffee. Daniel looked stunned. I remember that now. I thought maybe life was finally changing for me. Her eyes filled completely. Then, a week later, I saw you holding her hand. The room went silent again. Amara felt sick hearing the pain in her sister's voice. Vivian wiped angrily at her tears. You probably forgot me immediately. Daniel spoke gently. I never meant to hurt you. That's the problem, Vivian whispered. Nobody ever means to. Downstairs, faint voices drifted through the house as relatives continued preparing for the wedding, completely unaware that everything upstairs was falling apart. Amara looked at her sister standing in white satin and suddenly saw something beyond jealousy. She saw loneliness, deep, humiliating loneliness that had slowly transformed into obsession. Viv, she said quietly, why didn't you tell me? Vivian laughed bitterly. Tell you what? That every time I stood beside you, I felt smaller? Tears streamed freely down her face now. That I hated myself for being jealous of my own sister? Her breathing became uneven. I didn't want your life at first. I just wanted a life that felt equal to it. Daniel moved toward the door slowly. I should go downstairs. No, Vivian said sharply. Stay. She looked directly at him one final time. Just answer one thing honestly. If she didn't exist, could you have loved me? Daniel's face filled with genuine sadness. Vivian, he said softly, you deserve someone who chooses you completely. But that person isn't me. The truth landed like a knife. Vivian stood perfectly still for several seconds. Then shame flooded her expression all at once. She finally seemed to realize how exposed she had become, how desperate she sounded. She looked toward the mirror and saw herself wearing another woman's wedding dress while confessing feelings to her sister's fiancé. The humiliation was unbearable. Without another word, she turned and disappeared behind the folding screen. Amara heard muffled sobbing almost immediately. Daniel exhaled heavily and rubbed his face. I had no idea. Amara nodded slowly, still numb. Neither did I. A minute later, Vivian stepped out wearing her own clothes again, holding the wedding dress carefully folded in her arms. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, but the anger was gone now. Only exhaustion remained. She handed the gown silently to Amara. I didn't damage it, she whispered. Then she picked up her handbag. I can't stay here tonight. Vivian, wait, Amara said quickly, but her sister shook her head. If I stay, I'll completely fall apart. She moved toward the door before stopping briefly. Without turning around, she spoke softly. You know the worst part? Her voice cracked. I really did love you, Mara. Silence filled the room. I just hated what standing beside you made me feel. Then she walked out. Seconds later, the front door slammed downstairs beneath the sound of heavy rain. And for the first time since the engagement began, Amara no longer felt excited about the wedding at all. The wedding happened 3 days later, beneath bright sunlight and white flowers, but the joy inside the family never fully recovered. Vivian did not attend. Her phone remained off. Relatives whispered constantly, some blaming her jealousy, others quietly blaming years of comparison between the sisters. Their mother smiled through the ceremony, yet sadness lingered behind her eyes the entire day. As Amara walked down the aisle toward Daniel, she kept searching the crowd instinctively for the one face she already knew would not be there. Empty spaces sometimes hurt louder than arguments. Life moved forward after the wedding, but the confrontation haunted Amara for months. Some nights, she replayed every childhood memory differently, wondering how long Vivian had been suffering silently beside her. Other nights, she wondered if love inside families could accidentally become competition without anyone noticing until it was too late. Nearly 6 months later, Vivian finally reached out. They met at a quiet restaurant near the water just before sunset. The moment Amara saw her sister again, her heart tightened painfully. Vivian looked thinner, softer somehow, like life had finally exhausted all the anger out of her. For several minutes, neither sister spoke. Then Vivian looked down at her hands and said quietly, I'm sorry. Not defensive, not dramatic, just honest. Tears filled her eyes slowly. I spent so many years comparing myself to you that I forgot how to be myself. Amara listened silently while waves crashed below the restaurant deck. Vivian admitted she had started therapy after leaving home. My counselor told me envy is sometimes grief, she said softly. Grief for the version of yourself you think the world ignored. The words stayed with Amara long after that evening ended. Healing between them did not happen instantly. Trust returned slowly, painfully, in small pieces. But for the first time in years, the sisters began speaking honestly instead of pretending everything was fine. And maybe that was the real beginning of healing. Because the tragedy was never truly about a wedding dress. It was about what happens when one person spends too long believing they are loved less than the person standing beside them.